Oneness and Wellness. And our guest this week is Beth Casarjian. We're so happy to have you with us. And we've had your aunt, Robin, who's been on the program, and we're really looking forward to telling our viewing audience about what you've been doing. So once again, welcome, Beth. And I know something about what you've been doing. You've been doing a lot of writing. I think the first book was with Robin, Power Source for Youth at Risk. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Sure. Robin, prior to this book, wrote a book called Houses of Healing, which is an emotional literacy program for prisoners. And as she was writing this book and getting the book out there, she heard a lot of people using it, were saying that they were using it for youth. And Robin looked at the book and said, this book was really never written for youth. And she really wanted to bring the spirit and the content of the book to an adolescent audience. So at the time, I was working in a residential treatment facility in New York called Children's Village. And I was working with many of the young men who were in that prison pipeline. Many of the young men, 300 boys, ranging from 5 years old to 21 years old, who had basically been thrown out of the foster care system. Some of them having as many as 17 placements in different homes, many mental health issues. So I was working with the population that was destined to become the population that Robin was working with. So we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could bring this Houses of Healing material to a much younger audience? And many of the men that Robin was working with would say things like, if only I'd known this when I was 12 or 13. So we wrote Power Source, Taking Charge of Your Life, and followed the same mission that we did with Houses of Healing, which was to get it out to as many programs working with young at-risk men and women, girls and boys in some cases, as possible, and bringing emotional regulation strategies and skills and knowledge to these young men and women.
And I know you have a manual also with this, and it's also written in Spanish.
It is.
Right. So, so you're reaching a wide range of youth at risk.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Every couple of months or so, we'll get a letter from a young person who's either in the juvenile justice system or in a residential treatment center saying, I read your book, and it really changed my life, which, you know, if you've worked with young men and women at risk, many of them don't have great literacy skills. So it's kind of amazing that they read a book and are inspired to actually write a letter to the author. So
exactly, not only to write the book, but to send it to you.
Absolutely.
You know, that's really amazing because
is.
They're mostly with the technology, and who writes a letter these days? So that's wonderful. That's a good report. So from the Power Source and Youth at Risk, you evolved to Power Source Parenting. And how did that come about?
So as we were running Power Source groups, we would hear young men say, oh, you know, I'm about to become a father. And so here was this young man in our group, or, you know, a young woman in our group, who really did not have control over their anger and did not have control over the way they expressed their emotions. So we just wondered, you know, how were they poised to become effective parents in terms of transmitting effective emotional regulation strategies to their own kids? So we started looking around at different parenting programs, and we found there are many programs out there that talked about what we say are the nuts and bolts of parenting, how to diaper a baby, how to take care of a baby's physical needs, but we found really nothing that was designed specifically for teenage parents on how to pass along those emotional regulatory skills, because they didn't have them themselves. So there was really no way that they would be able to pass those along.
Right. That's exactly what was pointed out with Robin's original book, you know, that saying, you know, that you can't give what you don't have. So you have to begin to work with the children or the younger people, the teenage parents, so that they can do something different with their children. So tell our viewing audience a little bit about what you've done to help them regulate their emotions.
So we sort of approach it from a few different places. One is just to build knowledge about emotion. I mean, basic, fundamental knowledge that many of us take for granted, that, labeling your feelings. A lot of them, if you ask, what are you feeling? Sad, mad, and glad, or I don't know. So we do a lot with being able to identify your emotions, and then teaching skills, very simple skills. Because when we went out and looked at what the interventions are that help young people regulate their emotions, they're very complicated. And we realized that people needed a very rudimentary skill that could be applied across settings and across different situations with different people. So we have one skill called freeze, breathe, and choose. And we teach it repeatedly.
Freeze, breathe, and choose. Good for all of us.
It is. So you freeze, so you inhibit the dominant response to strike out at somebody or attack somebody. You breathe, which is a neutral stimulus, so it stops that chain of events from, creating a more, stressful situation. And then you choose. You choose a cool thought, something to help calm you down, and a good move. In psychological terms, it's response modulation. In everyday terms, it's just choosing something that's not going to make the situation worse, or that could possibly make it better. Walking away is a good move.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. And it's simple so that people can grasp that.
Absolutely.
And they can take it into their own lives, and they can begin to practice it.
Practice it and learn to mastery.
Right.
Because if you introduce all these little skills here and there that people don't learn to mastery, it never becomes their default mode. And so what we're looking to do is basically rewire somebody's default mode to be something that's adaptive and something that's not harmful.
Right, and something else that really interested me was that you're using some kind of like a cuff. That, tell me a little bit about that. Tell our audience a little bit about that.
So we had done a study in Rikers Island with Power Source a few years ago. So we've been working with a research team at NYU, and we recently got what's called an R34, which is a small NIH grant to look at the efficacy of Power Source parenting. And we are partnering with our old research partners, NYU, but also with the MIT Affective Computing Lab. And they created this sensor band. And the sensor band reads galvanic skin response, which is when you get stressed, your body, whether you know it or not, emits sweat. And the sensor band detects the sweat, and it sends a signal to a smartphone. And the smartphone actually gets triggered and then sends back the content of Power Source parenting, so these skills we were talking about, freeze, breathe, and choose, to the young mom. Take a deep breath. All children do this because a lot of young moms feel like their baby is the only one that throws a tantrum or has a fit or breaks a cell phone or drops it in the toilet. But it reminds them that all kids do that. So that's a cool thought, right? So it normalizes the experience, helps her stress go down, and then she can think more clearly.
Wonderful, and of course, all the young people have smartphones, so that's there for them. So they get a little message that comes through.
They do, or a video clip.
Or a video clip
of another young mom saying, "Take a deep breath. You're strong. You can do this. These feelings will pass," which again is the emotion knowledge. A lot of times people feel like, I'm mad. I'm going to stay this way forever. But the emotion knowledge tells us, no, you're not going to feel this way forever, and these feelings will pass. Just ride them out.
Right. Such good information for them. So I asked Robin the same question. It's my favorite question to ask, but what inspires you? I know that you're a mother, a wife, a mother. You have 3 children, and you're doing this amazing work and busy. You do trainings along with Robin. But what is it that inspires you?
Well, so we are recently taking Power Source, and we are adapting it for use in a large residential treatment facility in the Berkshires. And this young man walked out the other day, and he had a big Band-Aid on his face where he had been restrained, physically restrained. He was about 13. And I looked at him, and I realized, lovely boy, and I realized if he had the skills to be able to control his emotional reaction, his life would be very different. He would not have been restrained. He would not get the sense of himself as somebody who's out of control. So I realized these very basic skills, which many of us take for granted, are not natural, that we need to be taught them, and that they can really change the trajectory of your life. So looking at Caesar, I think to myself, you know, if he can learn this, it will literally change his life, his children's lives, and everyone that they touch.
That's amazing. So thank you very much. That's a wonderful story, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Pleasure.
And helping to make this a much better world, and helping all our young people who are at risk, and all the young people. I mean, I can just, you know, the meditation and looking through, you know, reading the book and the manual. Remember, there's a manual that goes with it also. So anyone who's out there working with young people, youth at risk, or young parents, you know, they can get this material through the Lionheart Foundation. They can order books and manuals. So, would you like